Brandon, just first off here, to see Damar out there in a helmet and going through team drills or whatever, how much progress has he made? What specifically has he been elevated to?
Yeah, really proud of him, you know, to take that next step. That's probably obviously you guys have seen him out here working out. He put the helmet on the last practice last week, and texted his parents afterwards, like just so proud of him and thrilled for where he's at in his journey. He's still got, more milestones to hit, but to think back, we're just at the beginning of June, and that was the beginning of January, and we were just hoping he'd live. And now he's not only got a normal life, but we're talking about playing not any football, NFL football. So thrilled for him, all the people that have been around him, and it's an amazing story.
What are the next steps before he, you know what I mean? Like you see he still has a journey. Is it like a step ladder type thing? Can you outline that for us?
Yeah, I mean, we're just upping his, building his reps up, and he's great. Like, he's mentally ready to go. He knows the defense. It's year 3 into it. It's all that. The next thing is going to be we got to put pads on. And it'll be at training camp, but I thought it was really important for him to, if he could and felt it was ready. This is a two-way communication. This is not us saying you got to do this, and it's he's worked really hard on the mental side of this. Physically, he's all cleared, but this is a real deal from a mental standpoint after you've been to where he was, but. The next thing will be when we get to St. John Fisher. I think he's done, we'll, through next week minicamp continue to ramp him up, with helmets on, but that'll be probably the next big hurdle for him tackling.
Was the Leonard Floyd thing something that came together quickly? Is it something you've kind of been looking into for a while? And why was he a good fit on the edge?
Yeah, I mean, you're always, as we say all the time, roster building is a 12-month thing, and I know people panic after the draft sometimes. Oh, you didn't get this position or that position. You never know. Things are always out there. Some guys didn't get what they wanted. He's a guy we checked in with before the draft. He's a guy we stayed in touch with his reps. And a couple of weeks ago, they said, listen, there is some mutual interest here. We talked loose parameters and just thought it would be good to get on a call. So I talked to him. It was the week before last. Had a nice 15, 20-minute conversation with him, told him about our organization, our team. We talked about, he played at Hargrave Military with Shaq and Dion there. We were just talking about some of the guys. Obviously, he knew Vaughn. And then, a few days later, Vaughn came up to me and said, hey, I heard you talk to Leonard Floyd. He reached out and asked some questions. And so that's kind of how it started. And then after that, after that talk, we really started talking numbers. He had some other teams interested. And this weekend, we came to a conclusion that he wanted to be a Bill, and he was going to take the deal we had on the table.
Brandon, how much does this out to you as potentially valuable to this defense?
I'm sorry, my phone.
What are some of his traits that stood out to you as potentially valuable to the defense?
Well, he's a pass rusher. I mean, just the ability to get after the passer first. Again, you gotta the best way to play defense in this league, in such a passing league. Yes, you have to stop the run. We know that, but we also got to get to the other quarterback, get them off the spot. Even if you're not sacking them, affecting them, hurrying throws, things like that. I think the last 3 years he's just under 30 sacks. So to add a guy like that to our group adds competition, and I think our guys all will rise up. Adding another guy like a Leonard Floyd.
Vaughn talked about how this might alleviate the urgency for him to have to rush back with Leonard here. Is that a fair assessment? And how much does he help, fill that spot for in the interim? And what is when do you expect Vaughn to be back?
Yeah, I don't know when I expect him back. I mean, Vaughn is shooting for week 1. That's his target. That's never changed. As we sit here today, that's still his goal. Our goal, even if we knew right now that he's going to play week 1, we would have done this. This wasn't a move of, Vaughn might not be ready. This was about adding to our group, adding another player, and just, we like to rush in waves. We don't play our D-line high volume of snaps. We want him fresh, getting after that quarterback. So it was really just adding another guy to the group.
How long had the Ed Oliver talks been ongoing, and what made this the right time?
I would say, we had talks last summer a little bit, and ultimately we didn't. We ended up not doing anything. And after the season, at some point, spoke to his reps, and I spoke to Ed and just said, "Listen, I'm going to get through the draft, and after that, we'll take a look. We'll see where we're at, what money we have left, where you're at, and if we can get on the same page, we think your best football is ahead of you, but it has to make sense for him, and it has to make sense for us. And, I think in the end, I think we found the right deal."
You've been pretty straightforward at times about Ed maybe leaving some plays out on the field that he feels like he should have made, or maybe you guys feel like he should have made. That's probably expected when you're a top 10 pick, that they're going to be pretty high expectations.
Yeah.
What gives you that confidence that he is going to take that step forward and develop into that consistent week in and week out force that now you're paying him big?
Yes, I've seen growth in Ed in more ways than just what you see on the field. I think there are more plays out there that Ed could make. I doubled down on that. Ed and I have talked about that. I know Eric Washington's talked with him. I know Sean has. Just, again, the more he plays, the more experience he gets, understanding at times what teams are trying to do to him. Ed's greatest trait is his get-off. And sometimes people use that against him, and he may run himself out of a play, just a misdirection or whatever. Knowing what they're trying to do to him, reading his keys, those are the types of things that can, take him another step. But I think his best football is ahead of him. Obviously, we wouldn't have done this move. That position is also, it's a premium position in our league, and they're hard to find, especially if you're having success. Where do we draft him? We drafted him up high. It's hard to find those. And so, I think we've invested in him through 4 years, and I think like I said, his best football is ahead of him, and it's on him and us to continue to develop him to be, one of those top players. Again, you're looking at those numbers. The highest guys making 30. You got a lot of guys getting in the 20s. So if they're any good, you're going to be paying them, pretty good money.
How pleased are you of Dalton's Kincaid progress so far?
Yeah, I think Dalton's done a nice job. He's coming in here. He's learning. It's still very early. He hasn't even been really in the building a month, but I think he's a great young man. He's working hard. He's given himself every chance he can to make plays out on the field by studying, working his craft, getting with Dawson and the guys in the room, and obviously Rob Boris is doing a good job getting him schooled up. But it's still going to be a ramp up for him, rookie year. I don't want us putting crazy expectations on him. I think you set him up to fail if you do that. But happy where he's at, and looking forward to watching him continue to grow in our system.
One more question on the.
On Hamlin from a rules standpoint, because he was out there in team drills. Is PUP and NFI an option for the start of training camp for him now?
It could be, potentially, but I don't expect us to do that at this point.
Again, back to Leonard. Is it a coincidence that you now have 5 guys who won a Super Bowl in that Rams team on this roster?
Yeah, I think it's, listen, it is one of the things you look for is when adding people who have done it and who know, you can always talk about, I can tell you some of the great traits that, I've been a part of, teams that made Super Bowls or championship games, and there are some commonality, and some common themes. So anytime you can add someone, whether it's a coach, a player, even more, that can talk through what's been there and tell the guys what that team had that kind of set them apart and got them over the top, especially, once you get into the playoffs where, everything takes ramps up another level. So, yes, it's not that we were just choosing that team, but they are, they won it a couple years ago. And so, that's a quality that, we wouldn't be afraid to, add.
Just as a follow-up, because Vaughn talked about this a lot last year. Imagining leaving LA for Buffalo. No offense to Buffalo, but LA is LA, and just to have that kind of thing happen was somewhat unheard of, before the Bills became winners.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reflection of what we've been able to do. Obviously, we haven't achieved what we're looking to, that ultimate goal, but I think we've shown progress. We've shown that we're going to be competitive. People like to play with Josh Allen. I think that helps, and I think people see that we've been close, and they're going to look at themselves as maybe I'm one of those players that can help differentiate it in some of the biggest moments, and I think that's how Leonard saw it.
A lot of conversations, with Ed leading up to this, starting last summer. People said that he's really focused on proving people wrong that have talked negatively about this contract. Do you get that sense that even after he gets paid like this, that you're going to get the best version of that?
Yeah, Ed's wired that way. He's he naturally has a chip, and I think he is aware that some people question whether he earned that or whether he was worth that. We don't. Like I said, we think his best football is ahead of him. Just because you left plays out there that maybe would have got you to, instead of 5 sacks, 7 sacks, or 4 sacks to 6 sacks, something like that, doesn't mean you're down on them. It just means there's more meat on the bone. And like I said, Ed naturally is wired that way. He wants to, he wants to prove it, and he still looks at himself as a young guy, and he wants to get back to the table and see if he can get, paid even more.
Could just ask you generally, from a defensive standpoint, understanding you still have a mini camp and a training camp to get through, but with extending Ed and bringing in Floyd, assessing the defense, the players you have, how satisfied are you roster-wise with where things are at right now? Understanding you still have a competition at the middle linebacker position, but given the way last season ended, how things stand right now, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, Adam, I'm never satisfied. That's never going to be in my DNA. We're always going to be looking, and we just worked out a couple DBs. We got another one coming in. We're going to be, Brian Gaine mentioned to me this morning, I think we've added 11 or 12, swapped out or added 11 or 12 guys since May 1st. We're still churning this roster, trying to make it as competitive and as strong as we can before we get to St. John Fisher. Not that we'll stop then, but you want the best 90 you can get and go compete it out for that 53. On the defensive side, I like some of the guys. I mean, in some ways, we lost Micah for all but 2 games last year. So just getting a Micah back, a healthy Jordan, a Taylor Rapp to that group, Damar trending very well for us. And then Trey White, year 2, we're just, Trey couldn't come in the latest that first year off, the ACL for him, his first time with a major injury. So just that alone, obviously the biggest question, I get it. People want to know what the middle linebacker is going to be. We like where we're at. We like the group we have. We think they're doing well. We don't have pads on, though, and that's where ultimately these guys are going to have to show up. The front, Vaughn and Jordan Phillips, we'll see when they're ready. I don't know if they'll be ready day 1 of training camp, but we hope to get them back, if not day 1, soon after. We'll be able to update you probably when we get down there a little bit on that, but adding a Leonard Floyd, getting, Boogie and AJ another year in our system. Daquan Jones did a heck of a job. I like the group where they're at, and I think it's going to be very competitive when we get to Rochester. My cap situation, you would ask me that, Adam. I've been doing a lot of things. I think we're around just over 4, but that's top 51. Without going through a 20-minute lecture here, top 51 versus doing some projections with Kevin Meegank and Jim. I'm going to guess with adding Leonard, we're going to be minus 3 to 5, somewhere in there. I haven't done that in the last day, but somewhere in that. So projecting how we would cut, that's no injuries. We're still going to have to do some moves at some point to create more room. So even though today on the top 51 we have, I believe, a little bit over 4, we really don't. And just knowing who we think has the best chance to make our roster, how guarantees are shaped and all that, I would say it's somewhere going to be 3 to 5.
Have much flexibility to do anything significant beyond this? You said you're still going to look, but nothing significant.
I'm going to look, and if somebody wants to come for cheap, come on down.
Brandon, you talked to John's point. You talked about, when you first got here, talking about having that sustained success. How much of that sustained success have allowed you to keep that window open, and how appealing is it to free agents that you try to bring in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's people want to join. If they have the choice, in general, they're going to want to go somewhere that they think they're going to have a legit shot to help the team, that they see a spot that they can make and affect, the ultimate goal. And then they want to be on a team that they think's a contender. Nobody wants to be sitting on their couch watching their counterparts play in January and February. They want to be in those games. And so the more times the deeper your roster is, the more loaded people look at it. Sometimes you win some of those tiebreakers. And, I think that helped us with Leonard, choosing us over one of the other contenders.
Brandon, to clarify on the cap, you said about $4 million in space right now, top 51. But when you project, when it goes to all 53, do you project to be over right now?
I do.
Okay, so you need to, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm projecting, again, you got some battles that I don't know who's going to win, but you can take this guy out here, moving it around. When we did it the other day, before I think it was before we were counting Leonard in, Jay. Somewhere in the 3 to 5 that we would be over if we had to pare this roster down to 53 right now based on what we know. And that doesn't count, if a guy goes down and he's out for the season in training camp before we choose that, you got to add that on top. So that's not losing anybody on a season-ending injury. It is, giving us a little bit of buffers, if we had to start with Vaughn on PUP or something like that. But again, hopefully he'll be ready to go.
With the cap being as tight as it is and being over, right now, how do you decide that Leonard Floyd is the best use of that money? How does that process work where you're okay, we only have so much to work with, but he's worth kind of using some of that on?
Yeah, you look at his skill level and his skill set, and we talked about it with Ed. He plays a premium position as a pass rusher, and so sometimes there's moves you got to make. It'll cause us a little heartache at the 53 and how we have to do things, whether it's push some money down the line or release a player, trade a player that has value. We'll consider all that, especially at positions that we feel we're deeper. And but again, just adding competition to the group and getting a guy with his pedigree in here, I thought it was worth adding him, at that price.
What do you need to see from Kyer Elam for him to become a consistent starting option for you in his second year?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyer, I thought, last year, first year, he really did some good things, especially on the field, on game day. I thought there were some rookie things that he did in practice that sometimes said, don't do that, just some learning things. But, in all fairness to him, I thought he, in games, he cleaned up a lot of that. So really it's just getting that to translate and being a more consistent player in practice, which I think he's showing, and I think that will continue to translate on games. But he's listen, Kyer worked really hard in the offseason, came back early as well to have himself ready. I wish I could say, hey, Kyer's not putting all his effort in or he's not studying. He is all in as much as anybody, and I think you will see him continue to progress. Us here, though, we're going to make everyone earn it. It doesn't matter where you were selected or what your salary is, and so Kyer understands that, and he's prepared for the challenge.
Brandon, you said you've had discussions with Diggs back in April. Do you anticipate he will be here for mandatories next week?
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate everyone will be here. I haven't been told otherwise. So, hopefully all 90 will be here in some form or fashion. I know some guys may be rehabbing, but hopefully everyone will be here.
Brandon, DeAndre Hopkins' birthday is today. You want to give him a call? Wish him happy birthday?
I'll tell Nuke happy birthday. Yeah.
Brandon, what's your take on the kickoff rule and the strategy that could produce during the season?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, I'm not really a fan of it. I was hoping that wouldn't pass, and that we would take some more time to look at it. I understand they're trying to get the the safety, and there's some, depends on who you ask, what, were certain things preventable, by changing the play or not. I am excited, not excited, I'm at least appreciate that they only did it for 1 year. And hopefully, I know the special teams coaches and even players were involved in trying to, save this thing. I'm hoping that we can all put our heads together and, come up with something that's better than what we're going to do this year. Maybe there will be some strategies, we'll see. Again, I know they'll obviously look at the health and safety of it, which no one's trying not to make the game safer. It's just trying to not take certain elements out of the game. But again, we'll see how it goes this year, and then hopefully the best thing is yet to come.